This is not a story about judgment. It is not about labeling individuals or sensationalizing behavior. This is an inquiry into a pattern that increasingly defines modern life. Because if we are honest, we are living in an era unlike any before it. An era where stimulation is instant, pleasure is accessible, and connection, at least on the surface, requires almost no effort. With a single device in your hand, you can access intimacy, validation, distraction, and escape immediately, effortlessly. But here is the problem. When everything becomes instantly available, something deeper begins to disappear, meaning. And in that absence, a pattern quietly forms. A loop of stimulation, reward, emptiness, and repetition. This lecture is about that loop, and more importantly, whether you are inside it right now. The modern psychological framing. Let's define the structure clearly. It looks like this: stimulation, pleasure, emptiness, repetition. This is not just behavioral. This is neurological. Every time the brain encounters intense stimulation, sexual, emotional, or material, it releases dopamine. And over time, the brain recalibrates. What once felt exciting becomes normal. What once satisfied becomes insufficient. And eventually the mind begins to demand more intensity or nothing at all. At this point, ordinary life loses its texture. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stability feels boring. Depth feels inaccessible. And so the individual returns, not because they truly want to, but because they no longer know how not to. This is addiction not as a moral failure, but as a conditioned system. A deeper layer, the repetition principle. There is a concept found in ancient contemplative traditions that aligns strikingly with modern psychology. The idea that unexamined patterns repeat themselves, not just after death, but within life itself. You don't need metaphysics to observe this. Look closely, the same types of relationships, the same emotional triggers, the same decisions, made in slightly different forms. This is what we might call a psychological recursion loop. And the danger is not the behavior itself. The danger is the lack of awareness. Because without awareness, repetition feels like choice. The critical question. So here is the question that matters. Are you choosing your life, or are you repeating it? Most people avoid this question because asking it requires something uncomfortable. Self-recognition. Can change actually happen? Now we arrive at the central issue. Can a person trapped in such a pattern change? The answer is yes, but not in the way most people imagine. Change is not driven by motivation. It is not sustained by willpower. It requires structural interruption. To understand this, we can look at behavioral, psychology specifically, staged models of transformation. Human change tends to unfold in 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, recognition. Something is wrong. This is the moment when the illusion begins to crack. Thoughts emerge. Why does this keep happening? Why do I feel empty afterward? Why can't I stop? This phase is rare because many individuals remain functional enough to avoid confronting the pattern. But without recognition, no change is possible. Phase 2, conflict. I want to change, but not fully. This is the most unstable phase. 2 worlds begin to compete. On one side, familiar, pleasure, stimulation, immediacy. On the other, discipline, restraint, uncertainty. And here is the crucial insight. Humans do not choose what is good. They choose what is familiar. So even when someone wants change, they often return to the old pattern. Not out of weakness, but out of conditioning. Phase 3, action. I restructure my life. This is where real change begins. Not through intention, but through design. Changing environments, reducing exposure to triggers, reorganizing relationships, introducing structure and routine, seeking professional intervention. At this stage, the person is not fighting the pattern. They are replacing it. The hidden turning point. Now here's something rarely discussed. In many therapeutic cases, change does not begin with strength. It begins with exhaustion, a moment when the individual realizes this is no longer enjoyable. What once felt thrilling now feels repetitive, predictable, empty. And in that moment, a new kind of awareness emerges. Not I should stop, but where is this taking me? That question changes everything because it shifts the mind from reaction to observation. Why addiction is so difficult to break? Let's be precise. Addiction persists because it is tied to neurochemical reinforcement, dopamine conditioning, emotional regulation failure, escape from discomfort, meaning deficit absence of long-term purpose. So any real intervention must address all three. That is why effective approaches include attachment-based therapy, addressing early emotional deprivation, impulse regulation training, learning to tolerate urges without acting, meaning reconstruction, redefining the purpose of one's life. This is not a quick process because we are not changing habits. We are restructuring identity. Midlife, the collision with reality. Now let's move forward in time. What happens when this pattern continues into midlife? Something shifts. The same stimuli lose their intensity. The same behaviors yield less satisfaction. Relationships begin to dissolve, especially those built on convenience rather than depth. Financial pressure increases. Health begins to decline. And then something unfamiliar appears. Silence. And within that silence, question, what have I built? Who is still here? What remains? This is not failure. This is confrontation, the opportunity hidden in crisis. Most people interpret this phase as loss, but psychologically, it is an opening. For the first time, external stimulation weakens enough for internal awareness to emerge, and with it, a new possibility. A life not driven by intensity, but by meaning, the structural path to change. If we translate everything into practical terms, change requires three simultaneous shifts. 1. Environment. You cannot heal in the same context. That sustains the pattern. 2. Behavior. You must introduce order, even when it feels unnatural. Routine is not restriction. It is rehabilitation. 3. Meaning. Without a deeper why, the mind will always return to immediate pleasure. Let me leave you with this. A life driven by stimulation will always demand repetition. A life guided by meaning creates direction, and direction, over time, transforms everything. If this lecture challenged the way you see your own patterns, consider staying with this journey. Subscribe, like, and share this video so that more people can begin asking the questions that actually change lives. Because the moment you begin to question your pattern, you are no longer fully inside it. And that is where change begins.